in Osburg in St. Lawrence County. And graduated high school in 1985, joined the Army right away. I was in the Army before I was out of high school. Went to basic, it was the very next day. I remember graduating high school on June 28th and standing on Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri for basic training on June 29th. And then never got out. Got out of the Army in 2010. And I went to OCS, did all my college active duty. Went to Officer Candidate School in 1993 as an NCO, as a sergeant. And then, so I finally retired from the Army in 2009, left the active roles in 2010, and came home. And I served as, well, I worked as an intelligence trainer on Fort Drum for a little while. And then I picked up, now I'm the Director of Emergency Services for St. Lawrence County. And unlike a lot of other people, which is great, but I had no political aspirations really. And it's, you know, the way the country's going right now, you know, when I took that first oath when I was still 17 years old, I swore to uphold and defend the Constitution of the United States. And served in Germany in the Cold War in the 80s, stood on the Iron Curtain against the communists. And you know, there was a distinct difference between what we were looking at, what were then the enemy, and what was behind us. And you could just, it was, the misery, the poverty, the despair was actually visible. It was, you could see the difference between oppressive tyranny and freedom. And as we stood there, and I say we, my brothers and I, you know, brothers in arms, we knew then that if it wasn't for us standing on that wall, tyranny would exist where we live now, in our homes, and our families. And it's sad though, after defending it for so long, and I've got 3 tours in Iraq, come home with 2 Bronze Stars and Joint Service Commendation Medal and some other stuff, and then you come home and you find that you never thought that against all enemies, foreign and domestic, would apply. And then you see over the years how our Constitution is under assault daily. Everything is like between the recent scandals of Benghazi and the Associated Press and the National Security Agency, listening to our phone calls and collecting the data in our emails and stuff. You would never think that our government would do this to its own citizens. And then now this immigration bill that really should be named the Democratic Voter Importation Bill, because that's what all it is. Because it's a plan to import, in a consistent basis, large voting block of foreigners into our country, make them legal, put them on the government dole, make them dependent on the government, and create a solid, permanent voting block for the Democrats, and keep the progressive liberals in power. And, well, we wish it wasn't this, you know, I want to go home, I want to raise my kids, I want to buy a little land, ride my horse in the morning, I mean, but I felt a call to service then, when I was in high school, and there's a call to service now, and probably no more dire and no more urgent than it's ever been to defend our country. And we all have to stand up, make a stand, and defend our freedoms. And it's now or never, because if we let it go now, if we think that now is the time to stand on the sidelines, we're wrong. Because if we just all we have to do is nothing, and they win. In our country, the way we knew it, the country that we grew up in the country we want to raise our kids and our grandkids in, will be gone forever. And someone has to do something. And I don't think that our current congressman is the man for the job. You know, he voted for Obamacare 38 times. Once to make it into law, and then as the House brought it to the floor 37 subsequent times to repeal it, he's voted against repeal. And that's just one small example. And they're trying to take our right to defend our families, they're trying to take our right to defend ourselves, and that's wrong too. You know, the Bill of Rights is non-negotiable. And those are rights that are ours by the nature of being human and American. And the government can't take those. That's why they're in the Bill of Rights. It's a limiting document to tell the government that they cannot have those rights. They cannot take those rights away from us. But they are. The First Amendment and They're trying to suppress the press. And then the Second Amendment and the Fourth Amendment, the NSA. I mean, if you ever watch the videos from the Boston, after the Boston Marathon attack, the tragic terrorist attack in Boston Marathon, and you see the armored vehicles and the policemen dressed in camouflage gear, military gear, going into houses, pulling families out of their house and into the street at gunpoint. Even though the law enforcement knew they were looking for a 19-year-old Chechen. Well, they go to somebody's house and there's now 19-year-old Chechens in the house, and why is everybody getting dragged out of the house at gunpoint? That's not the America I signed up to defend. And it's not the America I want to raise my kids in. I've got a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old. And the 5-year-old was born in Boston, and right as the Tea Party kicked off, and right as Obamacare was being passed. And I knew then that we're headed down the wrong track, and something's got to change. Somebody's got to do something. Well, it's fallen on us. We've got to stand up now together. We've got to say no. This is not going to be the America I signed up for. This is not going to be the America that my kids are going to raise their kids in. And so somebody's got to take a stand. And so, if not us, who? And if not now, when? And you know, I'm a Christian, and I liken it to I call it carrying my lunch pail, because you know the story of David. He was out tending his sheep, and his dad called him over and said, "Here, take this to your brothers." And they were serving in the military. He didn't have any idea at that moment that Goliath was waiting for him at the other end. And so he just faithfully took that pail from his dad and went on his way. And so we all just have to have faith at the end, but never sway from the path and carry our lunch pail every day and fight the good fight. So that's why I'm running. That's why I want the America back that I grew up in. And so when I get to Congress, because I wouldn't run if I didn't think I could win. So when I get to Congress, it's not just a matter of sticking up for the constituents of this district, but it's also being a leader and fighting for the whole country and turning this around. And there's a lot of things that both parties at the federal level I just don't agree with. It doesn't matter what party they belong to or any party. And that's got to stop. This got to change. And we got to get back to I call it the 28-point plan, and that is the 18 enumerated powers in the Constitution that tells the federal government what they can do and nothing else, and then the 10 items of the Bill of Rights. If the federal government can just stick to the 28-point plan, we'll be fine. And so that's what my goal is, to get up there and get them back on the right track, defend our constituents as best as I can, and fight every unconstitutional bill that comes along. Because that's the first thing that should be asked. Is not how do we pay for it, not where does the money come from. Is this going to help someone? But the question is, should the federal government be doing this at all? Just because it needs to be done doesn't mean the federal government has to do it. And have you ever stopped and thought about it? So, you know, you grow up, you go to a government school, you graduate from the government school, and then you want to get married. So you go get permission from the government to get married. And then you want to buy a house. Well then, you know, in my case, you know, I'll go get a VA loan from the government to buy my house. And then a few years later, maybe I'll have a couple kids. And so I want to put an addition on my house. Well, I got to go get permission from the government and a building permit to put an addition on my house. Then the government's going to tell me what kind of light bulb I'm going to put in my addition. Then the government's going to tell me what kind of toilet I can put into that. And then the government's going to raise my tax assessment afterward because I just put a new addition on my house. And then when my kids are old enough, off they go to the government school. And if they get sick, especially now with Obamacare, I'm going to be on a government health care plan. And then the government's going to tell me what kind of health care I can receive and how much it's going to cost me. And if I don't do it, the government's going to tax me and my family. And then it just goes on and on and on. There's not one single program or one aspect of your life that the government at some level or every level has got their fingers into. Why don't we try freedom for a while? I bet that works. It's worked for a long time. We were the shining city on the hill. We were the country that people would risk their lives. You know, when I was in Germany, a good friend of mine, her family came from Czechoslovakia, and she would tell me the story of the night her father packed everybody in the car with what they could, the clothes they were wearing on their back and what they could carry in their hands, and how they literally just rammed the checkpoint to get into freedom. And that, you know, he took his life and the life of his family in his hands, and it was worth the risk to be free. And why don't we try freedom again for a while?